All right, so we are back with another review, second one on the channel. Can't really count the Ninja Gaiden one because that one was right off the rip, actually during midstream. Nothing separate like this one, but I like to make this one, let's just say, my first official review on the channel. I took the time to go ahead and write some notes so that way I can keep my thoughts collected. If you watched my Eternal one, that one was also done immediately right after the game was done, but that was a beta, so it was more or less initial thoughts, concerns, compliments, criticisms, stuff like that. So now for this one, I actually wrote some notes. Hopefully it doesn't sound like I'm going too much off of a script, but I like to make it as, let's just say, professional as possible. So let's just get into it. So finished Cyberpunk yesterday, later in the day, and here we are. So, going into Cyberpunk, my expectations were just wanting to be absorbed into this crazy retro-futuristic world and being captivated by characters, the landscapes, the stories, the highs, the lows, everything about it. I was just really expecting to be sucked into this, crazy world, and I have a feeling I got that a little bit, but not necessarily. I was also just expecting some incredibly high-tension storylines with creative twists and turns, and just the gameplay, using the landscape as a way for the player to further engage and interact with the world and the characters. Basically, let's just say like Blade Runner, the video game. But what I got, and obviously this is just my personal opinion, nothing is fact, but what I got was something on the lines of an incredibly lackluster, underwhelming story with a sense of its characters not being utilized to its full capacity, and just essentially placeholders for us as V to just kind of move around and just force some dialogue. Feels like the story never truly captured the characters the way that I think that they should have been, considering how immersive and expansive Night City and the world is supposed to be. Obviously, this is an RPG element, and CD Projekt Red is known for, the player to make some detrimental decisions that can, determine their overall story and how they, as the player, finishes out their own story, writes their own story, etc., etc. But I feel like the overall progression of the story doesn't matter the decision you make. I still feel as if the ending is just leaving you with more, and it never truly feels as if the story is done. For instance, I think I got the devil ending. That was the card that I got. And, if you know what the devil ending is, essentially V gets, and I don't even know, and this is one of my gripes, is V gets thrown into space and is essentially, if you've seen Blade Runner 2049, and Agent Q is essentially having to take his test to determine if he's a deviant or not. And that's what that whole entire epilogue section felt like. That if I was a deviant, was giving these questions and, just taking me this and that. Now, while the premise was cool, I really do feel like the ending itself just didn't necessarily make sense. I had the choice to either be made into an engram or the choice to just go back to Earth and die within 6 months. I mean, considering how the first half of this story was, it didn't necessarily hit as hard when the ending came. I don't know if that is a design choice by the developers or what, but I, as the player, didn't feel like it necessarily hit where I wanted it to be. Obviously a subjective opinion, but whatever. It just feels like the game was never truly finished as they intended it to be, which is probably my biggest gripe. So getting into the areas that I'd like to review, typically I want to do a review on the overall story, a review of the characters, a review of the gameplay and progression systems, and the overall visuals in the world. So starting off with the story. Obviously, if you play Cyberpunk, spoiler alert, or if you didn't, the story of Cyberpunk 2077, and this is all written down. is that you play as V with the decision to make with the decision to start off as a corporate agent, a Night City kid living the life in the underground, or a nomad living out in the desert and essentially being free of Corpo and Night City. Through choices and interactions, V becomes a vessel of Johnny Silverhand's anger by means of injecting the Relic 2.0 into his head. With the heist going wrong, V gets betrayed, killed, and ultimately resurrects to fully become Johnny Silverhand's personality vessel. The game then progresses you through different stories to all lead you to the same road to remove Johnny Silverhand from your head. Obviously, there's much more to it, but just for the sake of the review not being too long, this is just obviously a general gist. So moving on to the overall review. I personally feel that the story is incredibly underwhelming and rushed. And this is just this isn't even going off of how the game ended. This is just going off of how I feel as a story of a whole. Obviously, if you watch my VODs, the playthrough isn't a full completion run, but I don't think that having to do side quests, gigs, etc., should hold any weight on how the MSQ overall feels, right? How I'm looking at it is the way the story feels has no weight to how long the story is, right? I mean, there's plenty of games out there that the stories are as long as 8 to 10 hours long, and they're amazing. But giving the expectations I went into going with this game, with how it was advertised, with how the media talks about it, you know, all through the development hell that I went through, I really do feel the story is still incredibly underwhelming and rushed. Getting more into the story, I personally feel like the story took a huge turn once we started getting into finding Hellman and meeting the Alocados out in the Badlands. That was kind of when like the story took off, and it just was incredibly rushed. Like going through the whole entire fiasco with Pan Am Palmer, it was just kind of like a blur. I knew what was happening, but I didn't necessarily like click. It never, I wasn't engaged. Like that was the point to where I kind of checked out, and I just was not engaged with the story as much as I were. And this is coming from, you know, we're meeting Rogue. We're starting to go after, you know, why Evelyn Parker was kidnapped. We're meeting the Haitians. We're getting into seeing the Blackwall for the first time, meeting Alt Cunningham, seeing that side of story, and getting to know why Johnny is obsessed with taking Arasaka down, why he dropped the bombs on Arasaka Tower, you know, all kind of these crazy highs, you know, climaxes, everything. It was balls to the wall for like that first half, from the heist all the way down to that. And then once we start getting into the Badlands and finding Hellman and, you know, getting introduced to Kang Tao, it just like stopped. It just overall just came to a huge halt, and I didn't really like that. I mean, we come from getting to see and getting to meet all these people to that. And then, you know, one of the biggest things too is like Evelyn Parker was such a paramount character in the story for such a long period of time, and then she becomes a side quest to figure out how it ends. Granted, I didn't do the side quest, but I feel that Evelyn Parker should have been a main character throughout the entirety of the MSQ, given how important she was, and then the fact that she ended up as a side character just kind of threw me off and just threw the weight of this, because that section was so compelling. And then we felt like that we was actually developing a relationship with Evelyn Parker and I forgot Judy. There it is. Her name's Judy. Between Evelyn and Judy, and then next thing you know, we become basically a therapist point and a dialogue lore dump with Judy, and then Evelyn just disappears. So it didn't really meet my needs. And then going through all of the story, we're hearing about all of these big names that happened before the bombs drop. Specifically, Adam Smasher, one of the first big baddies that we meet. Once again, going through Evelyn Parker and her love interest with Yorinobu, we meet Adam Smasher through the BD, and you know we're hearing about how big of a character he is, how deadly he is, how brutal he is, and then when we as V meet him, he essentially just appears, And then given to how the actual instance captures it, you walk into this big room that obviously is an arena, so you know something's big happening. And then once Adam Smasher appears, he's like, okay, well, there's Adam Smasher. Nothing else. Johnny checks out. I mean, I know obviously why, because of the decision we made, but Johnny checks out. So essentially just V fighting Adam Smasher. Excuse me. And that was it. No Grace, no bigger war dump, nothing. Just absolutely nothing. So, in the grand scheme of things, I really did feel like as we progressed through the story, it just kind of lacked the substance and the weight that it needed to be, because they had all the pieces to make it, but it just didn't cross that line. So, now, this is not me saying that the story is bad or terrible. I mean, it on the surface, it definitely is a great story. But given the expectations that I went in with having this, hearing all of this stuff about the game, it didn't make it for me. So let's just say it's mid, I guess. So moving on to the characters, I feel that they did the best with the characters that they created. Do I find them incredibly interesting? No. Do I find them bad? No. I feel that they could have been better, obviously, but given the production how they went through, I'm just going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say that they did the best that they can. I mean, the game gives you all these characters to engage with and build relationships with, but all of it just feels like it's whatever. Like, they're just placeholders. I never really felt like there was any kind of a relationship with these characters, personally either. Through the game or personally, I never really cared what happened to any of these characters. Ever. And with a game as massive and expansive as this, with such a big world to build off of, that should have not happened. They should have created characters that you build and feel and care. The perfect example is Jackie. Jackie was that character, and then once Jackie was killed off, it was whatever. Like, these characters were tools rather than actual characters to create a cohesive story. So, I mean, it is what it is. I personally think that throughout the entire story, the best characters are Jackie and Johnny. Johnny especially. I mean, just the character growth alone with Johnny just makes him an incredible character. It kind of seemed like he was a meme at first, given, all the media and all the response that, Keanu Reeves being Johnny Silverhand was. But overall, I think progressing through the story with Johnny, I think he was incredible. His growth as a character, how he developed, whatever. It was whatever you think, he was awesome. So, I mean, and then, I also didn't really appreciate how, you have Alt Cunningham, the character that essentially created the very thing as to why all these characters are coming together. And we meet her one time, and that was it. So, it's like I said, I feel like they did the best they could, but they could have done much better. Moving into gameplay and progression, obviously the best part about the game is, the gameplay, how it feels, right? So the way you interact with the tech around you, the gunplay, the swordplay, the hacking, the driving, everything, just how the character interacts essentially with the tools provided feels amazing. Blowing shit up with, hacking bombs, super fun and creative. I felt more engaged in interacting with the world that way than I did engaging with the story. Such as brain dancing or quick hacking the enemies, all super cool and fun stuff. And to be quite honest, playing the game had me more immersed than actually paying attention to the story, if that makes sense. The only thing that I can definitely say that kind of broke my immersion when it did was obviously the model bugs, the NPC bugs, just the little minute bugs that, have been around since the game first came out. It was immersion breaking. You walk around this world and you come across the enemy For instance, when I went and fought one of the cyber psychos, the enemy jumped out of the fridge and then she got stuck on it, and I was essentially able to cheese her. Or fighting Adam Smasher, I was able to essentially position myself behind a pillar at the right angle. When Adam Smasher came to come phase towards me like he did, like he does, he got stuck in midair. So the only reason why that I really do feel Adam Smasher moved out of that position was because I was literally going to text in my Discord chat to my friends and say, look, I bugged Adam Smasher too. And, you know, as soon as I exit out of it, then he moves, and then, you know, the fight progresses as it should have. So, I mean, it's all funny stuff. It's all funny stuff at times, but once it happened, it checked me out immersively, big time. Excuse me. And then, weapon progression, skill progression. I think the way that the game progressed you as a character was way too expensive, if that makes sense. Such as weapons. I'm pretty sure I used the same shotgun that I got when in Act 1, I believe it was. So for my entire, 25-hour playthrough, I essentially had the same weapons throughout the entirety of the game. But then when I wanted to go upgrade or buy new ones, it was just too expensive. On top of having to buy and purchase new cyberware or upgrade my cyberware, it was all incredibly too expensive. But at the same time too, the game felt like that it wasn't necessary, right? I mean, granted, the whole time I could have played safe, but it didn't feel like given the mechanics and the tools that the game can provide you, it just seemed like upgrading was a waste. Like crafting felt like a waste. Like there was nothing ever that I could craft that you know reached out and grabbed me and was like, craft this, you need to. The only thing that was worth really crafting was, you know, tier 2 or tier 3 attachments for your weapons and ammo. You got so much goddamn ammo throughout the game, there was no reason. And then every enemy dropped tier 2 or tier 3 attachments, so there was no reason to use those either. Now granted, I think there's mods that makes it a lot cheaper, but why the hell should I have to download a mod to make the mechanics that the game gives you worthwhile? So, you know, and a lot of this stuff does worry me for Witcher 4, but you know, I'm very hopeful for Witcher 4. Witcher 4 seems like their baby. Cyberpunk seems like their, you know, science experiment. But hopefully they can adjust these issues moving forward, and the development does go really well for them. Because if Witcher 4 does come out and it is a bomb like Cyberpunk, I really do feel like that it is going to be a huge bust. It is going to set them back big time. So, visuals and world. CD Projekt Red is the gold standard, in my opinion, for how they create their worlds, how the worlds make you look and feel. Excuse me. You know, going all the way back to Witcher 2, you know, the world that they created going into Witcher 3, the way that it looks, the way that it feels, the way that you interact with it, and then coming into Cyberpunk, it is a gold standard. I truly feel like CD Projekt Red can be considered like the Pixar of video game world building. They are incredible at it. And then, you know, I play this game. I have a monster of a PC, you know, the best of everything. So the gameplay that you see is, you know, everything maxed out, ray tracing maxed out, this everything maxed out. And I can see why ray tracing and the other NVIDIA AI use this game as its advertisement, because it is amazing by how goddamn good it looks. So, you know, that's just visuals, right? Visually, this is the best game I've ever played visually. Now, in terms of how you interact with the world, or how you interact with the NPCs that are, you know, put into this world, it is really not so hot. I do feel like that they were a little bit too ambitious in terms of how to drop the NPCs into the world or how they interact with the world or whatever. But you know, walking down the street or driving a car and seeing the same NPC doing this, it was like, come on, man. Or I seen the same two NPCs act out like, you know, you had a man holding on to the girl that the girl was, you know, shit-faced drunk and the man was trying to keep her together. Or you see the fat people walking around with their freaking arms crossed. NPCs just phasing in out of nowhere. You see their clothes just walking. You know, when you're driving on the street, the NPCs jump into the street versus jumping onto the sidewalk. It it felt like the game got the Bethesda treatment, right? We all know how Bethesda games are. The worlds are incredible. The NPCs are terrible. So, hopefully, you know, once again, another thing that they can that they can work on going into Witcher 4. So, those are my, I feel, you know, places of review. If you guys think there needs to be more, please let me know. I'm more than happy to talk about anything else, but you know, I do feel like the game was incredibly ambitious and just didn't hit the mark that it should have, considering the budget and how expensive they advertised the game to be. Hopefully, from an operational standpoint, CD's management team really tightens up for Witcher 4, and I have incredibly high hopes for that game to be incredible. Now, do I recommend Cyberpunk? I mean, I would recommend it. I don't think it's something that you need to play, but if you have absolutely nothing else to play, I would say it's a pretty good game to get through. Now, personally, my score is a 6.5 out of 10. I think that's a perfect middle ground with how I, you know, subjectively feel about the game. Obviously, you know, if you feel otherwise, please let me know, and then maybe I can come to a reason to increase it. But from here on out, my score is a 6.5 out of 10. So, and ultimately, that's pretty much my review. Nothing else for me to necessarily go off of. So, I mean, I appreciate you coming by and listening to the review. My next game is going to be Dragon's Dogma 2, I believe, so that way I can be ready for when Monster Hunter Wilds comes out. And hopefully I will see you guys there. Please, if you do enjoy the content and you do enjoy me talking or whatever, you know, give me some feedback, criticisms, what you like, what you don't like. Like and subscribe, tell your friends. You know, I'm here to stay. I'll be uploading, or I try to want to upload every single day. I want to try to stream every single day whenever I get the time. So I'll just be around and hang out. So thanks for coming by. Thanks for listening to my review, and catch you on the next one.